Welcome to Shaped by Faith with your host, Theresa Rowe. To find out more about Shaped by Faith and Theresa Rowe, please visit shapedbyfaith.com or visit the YouTube channel, Facebook, or Instagram. And now, here is Theresa Rowe.
Welcome to Shaped by Faith. I'm your host, Theresa Rowe. Today, I'm honored to welcome back Reverend Robin T. Jennings. He's a retired Episcopal rector, spiritual director, author, and pilgrimage leader, and he's just released a beautiful and timely book, and it's titled Expressions of the Soul, Celtic Christianity and Life with God. In his book, Robin invites us to rediscover the language of our soul through scripture and prayer and creation and the witness of Celtic saints, offering wisdom that speaks powerfully to our fast-paced modern world. Robin, it's a pleasure to be with you today. Welcome back to Shaped by Faith. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you, Theresa. This is fun to be with you.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, you have been busy, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
You have. Okay, so let me ask you this. What stirred your heart to write Expressions of the Soul?
Well, it's been a couple of years in the making, and it was interesting for me. My little granddaughter, have you heard of Buc-ee's gas stations?
We have been there once.
That's all it takes, Theresa.
Yes, I know, right?
Well, but not with little kids. They love it. They love it. This granddaughter, she was in a huge tub of foam rubber balls with Buc-ee holding her up. And my daughter-in-law got a picture of it. Cutest, biggest, largest smile you've ever seen. And of course, all of us were on the same link and all this stuff. And everyone was sending hearts and emojis, that kind of thing. But I replied and I said, what an expression of her soul.
Hmm.
And of course, no one else commented about that except it made me think, why did I say that? What was it about it? But it was such a natural sign of her vitality, her life, and her joy. Was just spilling out with Buc-ee.
Yes, and it will if you go in there and you
That's
go
right.
in with kids especially. Yes.
So that may not be a great academic explanation, but it got me working with that title. I mean, with
Okay.
that understanding and that understanding of an expression. And it's not just a smile or, how cute she was or any of this sort of thing. As much as with an expression, the word expression, you can also express as in, being able to take something out of an issue like an expression, like wisdom, like what we were talking about earlier, to be able to extract an understanding. And this is where I began to start to put the soul together with an expression, with an understanding of the soul at work. And then there's more to it than that. Is I was involved with a class one time just shortly thereafter, and one of the people up front where I was teaching raised his hand and said, "What do you talk? What do you make of the soul?" And I wasn't even talking about the soul, but it got the class going and talking about it. And there was a lot of crickets at the start when I asked them what they thought about soul. But then we also came from a Christmas concert, and I said to him, "What if there was no conductor for that concert?" And they looked at me, and I said, "A conductor to lead the choir, the orchestra, the congregation in the singing. What if there was no conductor? What would it have been like?" Well, then I started to talk to them about the importance of the soul is like our conductor,
That's a
leading
good,
it.
that
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
great analogy, Robin. Just amazing that God uses anything. He uses
Oh, yeah.
Buc-ee's to motivate you to write this book. Of course, your granddaughter, because she was
Of course.
there. Um, you focus on the soul as something that God gives. So
Yes.
nothing that we can manufacture. So why do you think we've lost that understanding in today's culture?
Oof, that's a loaded one as well. I think in large part, there is such emphasis on materialism.
Hmm.
And Also in that book that you have the afterword. I don't know if you saw that. There was an interview with Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk talking about artificial intelligence. And that is was fascinating. And I'll make it short. And this is not knocking Elon Musk, except that Tucker Carlson's, they were talking about the brain implants that Elon Musk is doing now in medicine and imitating personalities and character and completing sentences and all this sort of thing. Anyways, Tucker Carlson said to Elon Musk, he said something to the effect of, "What do you make of the human personality?" And he said, "Well, that's what I'm trying to imitate." And he said, "Well, can you imitate a person's character?" And he said, "We're trying to do that." And he said, "Well, what about the soul? Can you imitate the soul?" Theresa, there was dead silence. And Musk is a talker. He can talk. And he put his head down, lifted it back up, and he said, "I don't know. I don't know if I have a soul."
Oh, wow.
Theresa, are you still there?
I'm here. I'm
And you know, this was and I can guarantee you 75% of the people listening to it's on YouTube now. You can see it. You know, they were listening to him and saying, "Yeah, you're right, Elon," you know, all this kind of thing. But he said, "I don't even know if I have a soul." He said, "That's really more of a philosophical question, and I'm a scientist." You know, he just put down the barrier or the boundary, and which I get and I understand and all that sort of thing. But wouldn't it be nice if we could bridge those two um,
absolutely. It's
aspects of
sad
our?
that people don't know that the soul reaches the heart
Oh,
of our Father.
yes,
You know, like you say, it's the gateway for loving God.
yes,
I
yeah,
mean, how else are we supposed to do that? You
yeah.
know, if not, if we didn't have a soul within us.
And how do you know you're loving God and, you know,
Right.
without recognizing something going on within you, you know, that says, "I love you, God." And you give God the glory or the praise or joy, you know, whatever it might be.
That's right. All right, so you've been a pastor and you've been a spiritual director for years and years. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of different circumstances and situations that people deal with in their life. But uh, what do you see when people struggle when the soul is neglected? Is there a difference, you know, when someone like Elon Musk doesn't even recognize the soul?
Sure.
When someone else recognizes the soul, but they neglect the soul.
Well, here again, I go back in my memory bank to my great aunt from Somerset, Kentucky, and that where I grew up, you know, with my grandparents. But we would go stay with her oftentimes and would sit on, remember those big porches and the swings that go with the porch and all, and you wave to everybody who walks by and so on and so forth. And she'd wave back to everybody, and it was everybody, you know, recognized her, and it was a kind of a connection to her outside world. But then every now and then she would see someone who was struggling as they were walking by, and she would say something to me like, you know, besides usually finishing a sentence with "bless my soul," you know, she often would do that. And you know, I was 7 years old. I thought, what's she talking about? You know, but then I'll never forget, you know, she saw some people and she said, you know, that's a lost soul.
Mm.
And I thought, what in the world is she talking about? And so with that, again, is sort of my inspiration to come back, you know, like 50 years later and begin to respond to the way she articulated so clearly people's lives that were kind of slipping and falling and tripping and, you know, missing the mark.
And she had to recognize that because she herself loves
Oh,
God, and had that discernment within her.
absolutely. They don't make them like that anymore,
No,
Teresa. I mean, she
or
was,
the big porches like that. People
oh
don't get
yeah,
out on their porch anymore. And
no,
I remember going to my aunt and uncle's home in Erlanger, Kentucky.
oh sure,
huge porch, and the kids would hang out there. We loved it. And
Yes.
neighbors would visit. People just don't do that anymore. It's a shame.
No.
Robin, your book introduces us to many of the Celtic saints. Okay, so why were saints so central to Celtic Christianity?
Well, in large part, um, Rome fell
Mhm.
and collapsed with uh, the invasion, remember, of the Vandals and all of this kind of beer. And so the the organizational dimension to the church was, I'm not going to say wiped out, but was really destructed by that period of time that you were talking about earlier, led into the Dark Ages. And so these, well, I guess it was Thomas Cahill, who was an author with Doubleday, wrote the book How the Irish Saved Civilization, which is an interesting book in and of itself. Now it's a classic, I'm afraid. It's probably about 25 years old, um, but he wrote about that, the importance of these monks who would go down to Rome to save and salvage and bring back to Ireland the important parts of the church that were getting destroyed. And with that, they began to put together the they were Christians, and they really had more of a, well, let's just call it charismatic style of leadership. It wasn't, from the standpoint of, again, authority or a pope or something of this sort, but it was leaders who developed these little monasteries, which were like small villages. Um, should we pause or?
No, go
Oh,
ahead.
can you hear the, you can't hear the
No, I
dog
can't
barking.
hear it. Keep going,
Okay.
Robin.
All right. So anyways, what we found from them was they were able to put together civil life, civilization, and keep civilization going around the Christian values and around the Christian faith. That was something that certainly began with St. Patrick, and when you talk about these saints, I think so many people, certainly Protestant evangelical types, you know, I'm not going to pray to a saint. What is that? What are you talking about? What do you mean when you start bringing up saints? Well, Ireland had more saints than Italy had,
Mm.
which is really fascinating when you start to go and trace some of these leaders, is what they really are. The saints were they were holy men and holy, I said women. Uh, there was the egalitarian side to these early Christian movements in Ireland, and then certainly over in Scotland as well.
You describe saints like not as distant heroes because I think a lot of people think of a saint. I mean, the Bible refers to us as saints,
We're saints,
followers
sure.
of Christ. I mean, it
Yes.
does. So, you refer to saints as soul friends. So, how does that understanding reshape spiritual community today? Do people
Well,
understand that?
sure. That's one of those expressions. Again, soul expressions is um, the soul friend is it. The Irish term is anam cara, and what that means is you're able to connect with people, talk with people like my Aunt Annis, and have conversations at the level of a soul. And how do I want to say this? It's again, some people will talk about, oh, I've had so many friends who say to me they're spiritual but not religious. You've
Mhm.
heard that expression before, and you say,
Yeah.
well, great. Tell me about your spirit. Well, their spirits are all over the place. The beauty of religion is there is, again, a structure, but it provides us with an understanding of our Christian makeup, so that something like worship, is again an aspect of the soul
Mhm.
that, as you were saying earlier, our prayer life, so that when we give God the glory, it's a way of again offering ourselves to God in a way that is in keeping with the traditions of the church that go back to the time of Christ.
Absolutely. Um, Celtic Christianity flourished during what we call the Dark Ages.
Yes, yeah.
So, how did faith bring light and hope during those uncertain times?
Well, you know, and I know who the light of the world is.
Yes.
So we start with that, and that's where again I think so much of I don't want to say church history, but oftentimes church history and history itself overlooks this Celtic movement that really was, as I said earlier, charismatic from a spirit-led standpoint, as well as evangelism, which is, I think, all these are things that the church today can pick up and learn by not only using these soul expressions, but by living them out. Uh, an example would be the Methodist, Charles Wesley, um, and John Wesley, you know, the Wesley boys.
Yeah.
Okay, well, they would start their small group meetings with the question, "How goes it with your soul?"
Mm,
How about
good.
that for a question, Teresa?
That's a pretty big question right there.
Yeah, silence.
Yes,
No,
cricket.
but you know, people then have to step back and say, "Whoa, where is this going? What do they mean by that? Why I say something? How do I respond?" You know, and these expressions really are helpful. But then here again, the anamkara, the soul friend, taking care of another person's soul, helping them through difficult times is really important.
Absolutely. In your book, you write about thin places and you
Uh,
describe it, moments where heaven and earth feel close. Can you describe that type of experience? Have you experienced a thin place?
just about every day. No, you heard my dog barking. That was not a thin place, but
I didn't hear
you
him.
know.
You're
Okay,
good,
good,
Robin.
good. All right, good. The door's shut, but you know, seriously, being able to walk outdoors and enjoy the outdoors, and certainly this is what the Celtic Christian, with the primal elements of earth and wind and you know fire and water, that they found God in the creation. It's not that they weren't like druids. You may be familiar with the druid religion and witches and all that kind of stuff, you know, who prayed to a tree, who prayed to a rock, you know, all this sort of thing. They found God in a pool of water. They found God in the fire. Certainly, St. Patrick and the Paschal candle that he took down to begin the evangelism effort that he made. I could go on and on, but I think to respond to your question, it's been such an important aspect, I think, to live this life that these early Christians did. And you know, you were talking about a thin place. I can look at a mountain. I can walk on the beach. Sadly, I've been in car accidents. I don't know about you, but been, you know, really scary times where you think, thank God I'm alive. I came out of that alive. You know, my kids came out of it alive. You know, whatever the situation might be, that have been really ones that, what else do you do? Well, you don't, if you don't have God, except to say, you know, thank you.
Absolutely. I see the Lord in the sunset and the
Oh,
sunrise and the rainbows and the trees. We live on a farm, and I just feel his presence. Not that you have to physically feel, but I do. I feel his presence because this is his creation,
yes.
his created way. And when I see a deer or even a woodpecker that's annoying to me, that's trying to ruin our deck out there,
There
I'm
you
like,
go.
God created that woodpecker, but I'm going to have to shoo him away. But God, look how amazing you are. Look at
Yeah.
your creation. Thank you, Father, that we're allowed to even look at it, for our
Yeah.
lifetime. Robin, you've led a lot of spiritual pilgrimage to Ireland and Scotland. And so what happens spiritually when someone like steps into a pilgrimage instead of our routine faith?
Well, it's again, when you go to these places, some are thinking of window shopping, you know. I mean, uh, we're going to get a good purchase on something, or I mean, or play golf. Let's when you go to Ireland, I mean, there's a lot of what do I want to say, temptations, or all that goes. But we usually set with a theme, and with that, it begins to take a life of its own. For instance, when we start in Ireland, we start in Dublin and St. Patrick's Cathedral. That was the starting point. And then we went all the way around Ireland and we ended up in it's Slane, the Hill of Slane, where Patrick first began his evangelical movement. Uh, where I'm going with this, I think, Theresa, just for the sake of time, is what's the saying? It's not about the destination, it's about the journey.
Mm,
You've heard that before,
yes,
probably.
yes.
Well, that's sort of where I am with the pilgrimage. And I think I find this happens with people. Sometimes it takes a couple of days, sometimes they immediately hit the ground running. The sense of having um, a desire to seek God in the experience is not what they paid for their money or for going on this trip or something of that sort, as much as they're at a place and a point where they're really open. It's like a learning experience from some standpoint, from certain standpoints. But the learning is again, it's about God who has come into our lives at these certain places and times and points on the journey or the pilgrimage.
I think it would help us all to go on a pilgrimage, even
Oh
if
yeah,
it's a short, brief pilgrimage, even if it's you're going to stay at home and fast and pray and seek the
yes,
Lord, walk out in nature, seek the Lord, but it would be
yeah.
great to also travel. We live in a digital age, obviously. There's distractions everywhere with our culture. So, how does taking care of our soul help us stay rooted in Christ?
It's not easy. And in terms of the distractions, the noise, everything that takes place in our day and age, if my computer crashed, I crashed. If my phone is lost, I'm lost. This kind of thing. If I can't find my keys, what am I going to do? I mean, it's a funny way we live now. And so back to you and your question about the soul's with us. Uh, Hold on for a moment to the soul and say, where am I? What am I doing? What's today about? And this is in our devotional life, our prayer life, again, ways that we're able to step back and reflect on the importance of this gift that God has given us to be able to communicate to God and with God, both in our prayer life, as like I said earlier, with our worship life, and then with that comes certain meaning and significance and purpose and all those things that the soul is able to help marshal, or like we said, the gateway for the soul is found in this relationship with God.
Absolutely. I remember there was a time when I was raising my children when one of my sons one time I thought I lost him in a store and
Oh,
but I feel like we do that sometimes if we can't find our phone or we left our phone at home or we can't and I'm thinking it shouldn't be like that. We shouldn't it should not be like that. Yes, if we lose a kid, it should, but not with our keys in our phone. That's how
yeah.
much we prioritize, it seems, everything. Robin, for someone who feels spiritually dry or disconnected, where would you encourage them to begin with without feeling overwhelmed? Where can they start?
Well, again, that's I hesitate to generalize, but you do start where you are. I mean, so if you're at a place or a point that is dry, let's start with that. Desert's not a bad place.
That's true.
There's a lot of learning in that, where you start to let go of so many things. When you're having this desert-like experience or dryness that goes with it. But I think in terms of reflecting with people, it's a trust and a relationship that needs um, some introduction. In other words, just because of a title or because I'm the leader of the church or because I'm, in a certain position, that doesn't necessarily bring it into fruition. It's the
Right.
conversations that are important. And by the way, when I use a word like conversation, it's derived from the same word as conversion. So there's a change that's taking place, with people that needs to be recognized and supported.
That's so good. So we've only got like a minute left, but as readers finish Expressions of the Soul, what do you hope they carry forward into their daily walk with God? And also let us know where we can find your book.
Sure. Well, it's coming out on Amazon, naturally. So that's one place you can go. But I think what people are finding is a vocabulary and a way to communicate. Again, with so many of these young people today, we're finding, sadly, with Charlie Kirk, the movement that's the turning point movement. They want to talk. They want to have a conversation with you, with me, with the male, with the female, with whatever walk comes in their path. I've had this experience with young people, and that's very, very exciting. What's going on, I think, in our culture, that I think is going to bring some maturity to the conversation. This book with some vocabulary that can be used.
Absolutely. Robin, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. Everyone, check out his book, Expressions of the Soul, Celtic Christianity and Life with God. Thank you, Robin, so much.
Thank you, and bless you, Theresa, for all you're doing.
Bless you too. And bless you, everyone who's listening, and have a great day. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Shaped by Faith with Theresa Rowe. Remember to visit shapedbyfaith.com to find out more about workouts, the TV show, podcasts, blogs, Shaped by Faith products, and much more.